I'm Dr. Siobhan MacAndrew and I'm a reader in psychology at the University of Abertay in Dundee in Scotland. We're a very small university and we are wider access, which means that many of our students don't have traditional qualifications. Time is really of the essence for our students, and we also have a lot of early work to do to introduce students to what it means to be a student. They're often the first people in their families ever to carry on in education beyond the age of 16. I remember the times when librarians and academics used paper all of the time. Things have moved on since then, but we still have a need for getting access for our students to the correct materials. The challenge has been that now we have a huge information explosion. We have students who don't have very many skills faced with vast amounts of material, and we have to give them a sort of landscape and signposts as to what they ought to be reading. And so the challenge has been, how can we get vast amounts of reading lists from hundreds of lecturers to vast numbers of students, and to do this in a very effective and efficient way? That is a challenge in itself. But also when you have a lot of very busy librarians and very busy academics, the old style system of twice a year, librarians coming to academics and saying, what are your reading lists for this year, was an administrative nightmare. And this biannual panic to check that you have your reading lists in order. And now things are very, very different. One challenge that our students have is that they'll often be off on their own in the library looking for a journal article. So they will then go back to the lecturer and say, I can't get this article, or I can't get this article, they're asking me to pay. That takes a lot of time for lecturers to tell the students to no, go back, and it also generates a lot of frustration in the students and a lot of wasted time. Obviously, we need to clear all obstacles and make access to the materials very straightforward, very quick, and cut down on the amount of referrals back to the lecturer to ask for these relatively elementary things to be explained over and over again. I use Leganto almost every day, in fact. What I found previously was that I had to twice yearly create reading lists. I had to at that point think, what did I need? What did I no longer need? What I can do now is I can be just in my everyday working life. I encounter something that I think I'm going to need later for some teaching that I might not even be doing at that point. I use Cite It in the menu of my browser, click on Cite It, that particular piece of material is then taken straight to my reading list, and I know it's there, it's in the vault. So every day of my working life, I can come across something that I think will be useful later, add it to my lists, and it's had the effect that I can be more creative in my choices, because I can come across something by serendipity, which I might not have chosen if I'd been thinking in terms of a list. And so it moves you away from a list of books for your students to sharing a landscape of the typical things that you might read every day. And it also gives you the opportunity to be quite current, because something might be very timely, it might be in the news. So it's a gift if you come across something on BBC News, or if you come across something even in places like social media, you can click, collect, look at it later and annotate it. Now I have this really very close relationship with the librarian. As soon as I press that button, my librarian colleague can see what I'm requesting, they can check that it's available. There's a lot of pressure on you when you have all of your materials to create almost the day before you give the lecture. Even with the experience I have, that's actually still the case for me. I'm often asked to teach things which are not in my central area to huge classes of students, and I have to be quick about it. So within maybe a week, I need to have a very professional looking virtual learning environment. I have to have all my reading lists clear so that when students arrive, everything's organised and students can feel confident that things have been sorted out for them. What Leganto can do is to help me very quickly become familiar with a new area and to have materials organised in a professional way, even though it's not my specialist area. The student will see the reading list, but the comments that I can insert can reassure them, can tell them why they're reading that article, why I've chosen that article, and best of all, instead of having to find it, having to negotiate the publisher's firewalls and so on, they just click and it's there. The article is on their desktop, they can read it, and it means they spend less time dealing with looking for something and more time actually processing it. Access to information requires you to be information literate, and certainly information literacy is at the heart of our strategy. In actual fact, it's so recognised that Leganto is a very useful tool that it's been put into our operational plan as a university, that this will be something that it will be built in to the software that lecturers and students are actually required to use. So it's not just that it's an option, there's a recognition that this is a piece of software, a tool for learning that's of kind of equivalent status to, say, Word or Excel or PowerPoint or any of the other major pieces of software that any graduate would be expected to be expert in. Leganto isn't just a tool for students or for staff or for librarians. The way we use it is as a team, and I think that's one of its greatest strengths. There's facilities within it for students to comment. My librarian colleagues talk to me within my reading lists. We can share ideas, suggestions, and so what I find that's so useful about it is that we're all using it in our different ways, but it's very coherent. In all well-run universities that have high-quality teaching, it's vital that librarians and academics have a close and fruitful relationship. However, it's very difficult to see your librarian colleagues on a regular basis. The types of jobs that we need to do together are actually quite complex. In the past, we might have been sending messages to and fro, and there was often a sense that we were really just throwing information at each other. What Leganto allows you to do is to feel as if your librarian colleagues are partners in the creation of the learning materials. It really facilitates a very good working relationship between these two vital parts of the university. The growth of use of Leganto is unusually by word of mouth. Often in universities, a new piece of software comes into the university and academics say, oh no, something else that we're being asked to do, something else we need to learn, we're all very busy, and so on. So librarians and learning technologists often have a bit of a hearts and minds job to do to introduce new learning technologies and have them used on a regular basis by everyone. What happened with Leganto was really interesting and very, very different. Our librarians had a relatively small workshop group. Perhaps maybe 15 members of staff came along, and they were encouraged at that point to bring along some work they were doing at the time on their modules. The librarians then said, look guys, this is a new way to create your materials, go into your virtual learning environment, and let's do it now. And so everyone in the room was able to start right at that moment creating materials. So a job that had been unwieldy and not enjoyable and involved lots of lists that you may or may not be able to find was suddenly very quick, very easy, and actually fun. So at the end of that tutorial, the people went out and started telling their colleagues how great this software was and how much fun it was to use. And so the ball started rolling. This piece of software is really easy to use. It makes your life easier. A reading list produced by Leganto actually looks quite inviting. The lecturer can put headings into it, they can put comments into it, and also we can use a controlled release, so we can carry a student through readings from an elementary reading to a more advanced reading. So I can honestly say that Leganto's been adopted because lecturers felt enthusiastic about it. So there's a possibility of discussion building within the reading list, which is a very, very nice option. Students tend not to be very keen on discussions within virtual learning environments because they often don't have anything to say. But within a reading list, they can actually say something concrete about an article. I can read it, I can get some idea of their level of understanding and their level of engagement. The I function gives me an idea of how many people have actually read that article. And that's a very concrete index of the student engagement with the reading materials. And since everyone's now taking a lot of metrics about attendance and engagement, information like that can be invaluable to me so that I can tell at what level my students are understanding the work and engaging with the work, but also to librarians because it gives them an index of how useful some of these materials are. One of the other things that Leganto does is that it actually speaks to students' familiarity with social media. It actually graphically and on the page looks very appealing, it's easy to navigate, there aren't very many clicks. And so when a student is visiting that site, yes, it's scholarly, it has academic material, but it's friendly and it's familiar. And so anything that helps students to feel confident and comfortable with scholarly material, I'm really keen on. And anything that gives them a sense of ownership of the academic material. Leganto takes that forbidding nature of advanced academic material away and makes it accessible and makes it fun. And most importantly, the feedback we get from our students at Abertay is that the reading lists make them more curious and the reading lists encourage them to read more. And of course, that's the goal of every academic and every librarian in every university.